John had a two-cell flashlight that he kept in his back pocket. Shined it up there and it was spotted. I'm not going to say who shot him, but it's a $10,000 fine for who shot him. They found out about it and then we more or less got on the most wanted list. Because you're not supposed to kill jaguars in the United States. Well, now this flag here, this is the flag of the state of Texas before it became a part of the Union. Texas wasn't a state until 1845. It won its independence in 1846. And my great-great-great-aunt Sarah Dodson made that flag at Goliad. Uncle Isaac, her husband, Archelius Isaac or something like that, but we've always gone by our middle names. But she made the very first flag to fly over the Republic of Texas, and we come here before it was the Republic of Texas. It was just Texas, you know, but we've been here that long, and this farm has been here that long. But the latest records are from 1845. That's the earliest written records, because it didn't become a state and wasn't no need to have any records. When the railroad came through, they burned the courthouses down in a 3-county area of where they wanted to put the railroad so they could destroy any written records there were. And that's the way they came through here and cut off about 15 acres of our land, and we couldn't say nothing about it because there was no written records. And back then, if you bucked the railroad killed your ass. They changed the course of creeks and everything without any, you know, they didn't pay you nothing. They just did it to be doing it, just to show their might and power, I guess, just like the Democrats are doing now.
Where did your family come from before they were in Texas?
Tennessee.
Tennessee. Whereabouts?
I don't really know.
Tennessee's the best state.
I know they had to leave Tennessee because the law was chasing them.
You know why?
Oh, yeah. They'd killed some people up there. They got a feud and they'd killed some people, and they had to come to Texas to keep from getting hung.
What was the fight over?
I don't know. Somebody killed somebody's hog or something. I have no idea. That, you know, or stole a mule or something like that. And they start killing. Well, you kill one of my kinfolks, I'm going to kill you. And it's just the killing, you know, just started rolling, and they were about to kill everybody else. So the family came to Texas. I know when Sam Houston was gathering troops in Gonzales at the Houston Oak, Sam Houston Oak tree. It's still there, and it's called the Houston Oak. But he was recruiting people there, and what you got was a drink of whiskey and $1. My family was trying to fight anyway. I lost William Henry Dodson at the Alamo. That's the way we wound up with this place.
So they helped settle this area?
We were the fifth white family in this part of East Texas.
How much land did he originally acquire?
160 acres. Give you 160 acres, and we bought the rest of it. You know, the whole 400. 10 cents an acre. Well, when I was about 3 or 4 years old, and I had my black mama would take me down to the pond down there to the lake, and we'd fish. We'd go out to the sink drain and take a shovel and dig up some dirt, and then get the worms, and we'd take 2 cane poles, we'd pull them out from under the house and take 2 poles down to the big lake down there, and we'd just sit back, and she'd be fishing. She always dipped snuff, and she'd put a worm on the hook and then spit on it so the worm would wiggle. And then she'd take that pole and swing that bait out there with that cork on it and put it out there in the water. And back then we didn't have round corks. What we had was a piece of real cork. And you just put it on your line, you slid the line through it, put the hook through it, and slid it up or down whatever depth you wanted to fish. and we'd be fishing and fish and fish and fish. And if we wasn't catching good, Auntie Hannah, that's my black mama, she raised me and my daddy kinda, but babysat her more than anything. But she called me her little white child. But she'd cast that worm out there on that, swinging out on that long cane pole, and if they wasn't biting, she'd roll it up that string up around that pole and then just beat hell out of the water. And she said, "Wake up, damn it, wake up." And the damn fish would wake up and start biting. Auntie Hannah, we just had a heck of a good time together. My daddy caught a big catfish down there on the trot line. I said, "How big was he?" He said, "He was a big one." And I said, "Well, how big was he?" He said, "I don't know, but we took a picture of him, and the picture weighed 10 pounds. My daddy was a character. And he had some good friends, and they'd go fishing, and of course they'd always pass the bottle back. They never sat very far from each other. They'd pass that bottle back and forth, and then they'd pee in the water. And Daddy said, "Let's get those fish drunk." He was a character, like I say. Let's get them drunk. I killed my first hog. We was butchering a hog, and we piggied them up there in the hog lot. Poured some feed out, and Daddy said, "Now that one there is the one we want. And you shoot them like you've always seen me shoot them," because we'd kill 3 or 4 hogs a year and butcher them out. And he would wait for those hogs to get up there and piggy them, dribble a little corn there, and pigs would come up there grunting, and Daddy'd tell me, and I wasn't 4 or 5 feet from them, and had a single shot 22, and he'd say, "You shoot them the way I shoot them now," and they'd have the head down on the ground. If a hog is standing up, you can't hardly hit him between the eyes, but you can always shoot him in the burr of the ear, and it'll kill the heck out of him. But that pig was up there, and I shot him. He fell down on the ground. Daddy opened the gate and went in there and stuck him to bleed him out. He bled him out real good, and we drugged the pig out and took a mule and hitched him up, drugged that pig up to the house where we had a rope hanging down out of the tree, and we had what you call a gambling stick. A gambling stick had nothing but a piece of wood about that long, sharp on each end, and you cut holes in the tendons. So you stick that stick in there and then take that rope and pull him up. His legs is about that far apart, and you can just skin the heck out of him and do all the cleaning and everything. But we scalded him, and Daddy'd dig a hole in the ground at an angle, a pretty nice angle, and we'd have water heating up in the wash pot. And he'd get all 2 or 3 5-gallon buckets full of hot water and pour in that scalding tub. And it was just a barrel, and pour that in there and put a little bit of soap, just a little bit of soap to kind of melt the oils in the hair and stuff. And stick that hog down in there and wash him around a little bit and pull him out and turn him over and stick him back in there and wash him around a little bit, take him back up and throw him on a table. And we'd take knives and scrape that hog, scrape him off good. And Daddy'd pour some warm water on them, and we'd wash them off and get them good and clean. And they'd be gutted, we'd gut them and hanging up. You always want more fat in your meat than normal, because it makes sausage, and then grind that sausage up, take the guts out of them, sling all the intestines, guts, and then turn them wrong side out. The way you do that is you tie a knot in the casing, the gut. Tie a knot in it, and you push it back up inside the gut a little bit, and then take a broom handle and push it out, and it cleans it out, and then you scrape that inside out real good. And that's where you get your casing for making sausage, link sausage. Patty sausage is good, but link sausage is better. And we'd, take it and then hang it in the smokehouse and smoke it. That's the way I still do it. Only I buy my cases now. I don't clean them myself. Well, I got my first gun. Daddy bought it out of a hock shop. It's a 22, and we'd always shoot 22 shorts because they was the cheapest. When I started buying 22 shorts, they were 25 cents a box for 50. Now I think they're about $4. But, heck, it's still the cheapest thing I can shoot. But we had a lot of, we'd squirrel hunt, had a good squirrel dog. She'd tree. And best day we ever had, I think we got 13. And she had treed 13 squirrels that day. And we'd go and find them, and the squirrel will walk around, just go around a tree. You can't see nothing but just one eye, but somebody on the other side of the tree could see him. And it just depended on who had the gun was who killed it. By the time I was 13 years old, I was riding enough horses to pay my way. And it's been very lucrative for me, and I appreciate the Lord for giving me the talent to do that. I guess I was born to be a cowboy. But when I started, I was 4 years old, and we had a donkey that we broke calves to lead and young colts to lead with. And just put a big strap around that donkey's neck and put a halter on the colt or the calf, whatever it was, tied to that big strap. And, of course, that donkey would take that calf or that colt wherever they went. Auntie Hannah had kind of, just worked part-time because, heck, she was probably 80. And, she took care of my daddy and my brothers and me and my daddy's brothers. She'd walk up a mile every day. Her and Uncle Essie'd come every day. Uncle Essie worked on the farm for us, and he could plow 5 acres with a 1-horse Kelly in a day, and that's a lot of walking. Anyway, I was 4 or 5 years old, and I'd seen my brothers riding that donkey Frill. I decided I'd ride Frill, and went outside and found a pea basket. And old pea basket, is just a bushel basket, have those wire handles on each side that you can carry it with. We'd weigh those, put them in that hopper for the scales and weigh those peas. I don't know what they paid. I'm sure it wasn't much because back then $1 a day was pretty good wages for farm labor. $1 a day and lunch. That was it. And all the cool water you could drink. And a lot of those pea pickers hung around the water can more than they did the pea patch. So they didn't make much money. But I was decided I'd ride Frill, so I had a halter on him, and I turned that pea basket upside down. It was an old pea basket. It wasn't very strong. That's how little I was. I was able to stand on that pea basket to get on the donkey because I was that little. So I finally got up on Frill, and I had us sitting up there, just proud of myself as I could be, and I decided it was time to walk off. Well, I pulled Frill around, and he took a step, and I fell off. And I did that twice. I fell off twice, and then I started crying, and I was mad, and if I'd known how to cuss, I would have. When I was a little old bitty kid, I'd get fussy and stuff like that. She'd pull out an old brown tit about that long. She was a skinny little woman. She'd pull out one of those old brown tits, say, "Here's titty, baby, come get some of this titty so you quit crying." And boy, I had to straighten up and run. Well, since then, I've learned how to cuss, and now my wife tells me I do it a little bit too much. But, I got real good at cussing over the years. I got to where I could ride Frill, and my daddy came in from the blacksmith shop that evening. My grandmother met him at the door and said, "Irvin, the baby has the gift." And Daddy said, "Oh, hell, he'll never be worth a damn but to mess with a bunch of damned old horses." Well, it turned out I did turn out worth a damn. I mean, I've gotten well healed since then messing with danged old horses. But that's just part of it, you know. Hell, let's get back to the hunting. With Pee Wee, that good squirrel dog we had, we was hunting and hunting and hunting, and he had caught a hog, a wild hog, first wild hog I ever saw in my life. And went down there, I don't know, 12, 14 years old, something. And I shot that boar hog with a .22 short in the burr of the ear and dropped him right there. So I went up there, and he stunk so bad I couldn't hardly get to him. Because he was a big hog. He probably weighed 350, 400 pounds. I mean, huge hog for a wild hog. Had a tail like a mule. It just, you know, it wasn't kinky like most pigtails. And I thought, boy, that's strange. He had tusk on him about that long. He stunk so bad there wasn't no way in the world I was going to bring him back to the house. And besides, I couldn't have drug him anyway. But I come back in and I told Daddy about it, and he said, well, let's go look at him. So we went down there, and I guess the reason he didn't run or nothing was because Daddy said, he's been eating mash. And I said, what's mash, Daddy? And he said, somebody's down here's making whiskey, and they poured out their mash, and this hog ate it and got drunk on it. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, really. The hog did that, eat that mash and got drunk. He said, one time when I was a boy, he said, we down there, and he said, I knew my oldest brother was making whiskey down in the bottom a little ways, and so you'd have water down there out of the creek. He said, the hogs didn't come up, and the hogs didn't come up, and they still didn't come up. Finally, the old sow, I seen the old sow walking, and she laid down in the cow trail. He said, I went down there to see about it, and I kicked her with a toe, and she went, like that. And he said, I knew what happened. She had been eating that mash and got drunk. And he said she had 12 little pigs. And he said, I'd walk, and he said, there'd be a pig or two laying down here asleep, sober enough. He said, there'd be pigs on down here asleep. And he said, when we got up the next morning, he said, boy, those hogs felt terrible. He said, they'd all made it to the house during the night. And he said, but they felt that terrible. And he said, I told my daddy about it, which is my granddaddy. He said, I told my daddy about it, and he said, oh, they were just drunk. They was eating Floyd's mash. That was my daddy's oldest brother. My daddy told him, he said, boy, you quit making whiskey down there. Daddy, he probably knew that I was going to be a drunk. We was on not a senior trip, but a FFA trip. I hired a black guy. I gave him $5 to go in and get us a pint of vodka. And me and Harvey West and Johnny Bass, I think, and some more of us, we was freshmen. We thought we was big time, and we was staying at the Rice Hotel in Houston. And I got drunk that night, and that's the first time I ever got drunk, and ever since then I've been wanting to stay drunk. I was running up and down the halls of the Rice Hotel naked. Mr. Cole, our ag teacher, he never found out about it, or I don't think he did. The next day I was so sick, I felt, and I told him I got hold of some bad orange juice. I always thought I was cock of the walk, and you know where cock of the walk came from? The slave owners would take their best slave and strongest slave, and whichever one could pick up a bale of cotton and walk the farthest with it didn't have to work for a year. Now, this is actual fact. I'm talking about fact. But whichever slave could pick up a bale of cotton and walk with it the farthest became the cock for the breeding season. And these other slave owners would bring their female slaves in and breed that's all he had to do was lay up and breed. They bred them to be strong or fast or tall or short or whatever. But that's where the phrase cock of the walk came from, because Auntie Hannah told me so. just like breeding horses and cows or dogs or whatever. You bred for superiority, and so they'd be better slaves. And I never knew of anybody, or my family never knew of anybody that abused their slaves. There was more black people on slaves than there was white people that owned slaves, because the black people would have those slaves and rent them out to the people that needed extra help. And that's about the way it was. They were the ones that were brutal, the ones that rented them out. And I never knew of anybody. We was out at the drive-in. I was, I don't know, 12, 13 years old. But they had a fence around it, a sheet iron fence to keep people from coming driving down the road and stopping and watching the movie. And it cost 50 cents to go to the drive-in. And anyway, that was over by Ray's Motel. I had dug a hole under that fence. I dug with my hands. Hell, that was just old sugar sand. And you could just scrape it out, you know, just more than you could dig with a shovel nearly. And I'd crawl under the fence and go up there and sit down at the concession stand. They had a bunch of lawn chairs. I'd go there and I'd sit up there in the seat, you know, and watch the movie. And I'll never will forget it. It was House on the Haunted Hill or Haunted House on the Hill or whatever it was. There was an old gal we called Goose. Goose was just a whore. And she was 15. And anyway, this kind of a friend of mine, he thought he was cock of the walk. So, and I knew I was cock of the walk. I'd been talking about this old boy having sexual relationships with Goose. I can't remember her name. She wasn't even halfway cute. I guess that's the reason she was so easy. But anyway, I'd said something about it, and he heard me up there at the concession stand. Anyway, he swore at me a little bit, and we got in a fight. I was the youngest of my family. I was the baby boy and had two big brothers, and they taught me how to fight. And I mean, they taught me how to fight, because they just beat hell out of me. But anyway, I was the kind that wouldn't quit. You know, there ain't no quit in me. If you're a quitter, you're a loser, in my opinion. But anyway, I blacked both of his eyes, and coming home after watching that scary movie, and across the railroad tracks and picked up the cow trail, coming from after we got back in some pastures. I was walking through there about half scared anyway from watching that scary movie, because there was a bunch of axe murders and stuff like that in it. And those Black Angus cows was laying in that cow trail. And it was cloudy and you couldn't see them. And I walked up there and I ran over one of those cows laying down asleep. And it seemed like that cow got up for 30 minutes. And I was tangled up with those cows, and it seemed like I just couldn't get off of it. It couldn't get out from under me. But
did you know it was a cow right away?
No, it just scared the crap out of me. As soon as the cow bellered, you know, I knew what it was probably instantly, but I was so dead burned scared. And anyway, I got back and the damn law showed up. Daddy come and got me. And he said, "How bad you hurt him?" I said, "I don't know, whipped his ass." I didn't check him, you know, or nothing. And he said, "Well, they going to get you." And I said, "For what?" He said, "For fighting simple assault." And of course the deputy came in the house then, and I guess they was trying to scare you. He said, "Get the cuffs and let's cuff this boy and take him to jail." Well, that scared the crap out of me. So anyway, that was the extent of my fighting until I got a little bit older. One of my great uncles was the first preacher. And I grew up in church, worked and everything around the church, and just a little old bitty church. Oh, let me tell you about the church. Now this is kind of funny. There was an old gal we called Sweaty Betty. And she didn't live very far from me, and she wasn't, you know, fat or nothing. She wasn't ugly. She was a pretty good girl. And her and another old gal, I it was Sue something or another. And we had outdoor toilets. We didn't have no indoor plumbing down at that church. And there was a trail going to the women's outhouse, but the men, they'd just go out behind a tree or something. The night before, the dogs had chased a coon in the outhouse. And the coon went in the outhouse and went down in the hole. It was just a one-holer, and they went down in that one-holer, and the dogs couldn't get to him, and I think it was T.J. Belcher. Yeah, it was T.J. Belcher. He had an axe, no pole axe, and knocked the back out of that outhouse, and the dogs went in there and got the coon as soon as they pulled a couple of boards off and killed the coon. And boy, she smelled like crap when they brought her home. They had tried to wash her up a little bit, but she still stunk. And brought her home, but Booger, his name was Booger Mize. Booger Mize, the reason I found out about it was the next day was church day, and I seen Booger coming back just a giggling, and his arms were wet. And everybody was laughing, and I got over there where I could hear what's going on. I was just a little bitty fella. Come to find out, Betty and Sue went pressing off out to the outhouse, and a bunch of those bigger boys seen them going out there. Sweaty Betty had sit down on that one-holer and was relieving herself, TTing, and Booger said, I ran my hand up there and grabbed her by the cheek of the butt, and she screamed and hollered, and she tore the door down off the outhouse. She had her panties down around her ankles, and she was long-stepping. I mean, real long-stepping. She hollered, something got me. And that day, they voted at the church to install indoor plumbing. And ever since then, there's been indoor plumbing at that church house.
Now, how old was she?
She was probably maybe 13.
So was the humor a little bit different back then? Because if somebody grabbed a 13-year-old's butt now...
Oh, my God. Hell, they'd have the FBI out.
How old was Booger?
He was about 15.
Oh, boy.
The laws are all so screwed up now that people can't be people. Well, I have this one deer hunting story before I ever sobered up. I was bad about drinking, and my ex-father-in-law drank a lot too. He got up drinking and went to bed drinking. Me and him had been drinking all night one night, and Old Crow, and next morning I got up and went down to the Target Ranch, the Circle Dot. Oh, I felt bad, and I walked about half a mile away from the pickup. I found a live oak thicket down there, and I was laying in that live oak thicket. I got sleepy, and I just went to sleep. I didn't mean to go to sleep, but something woke me up, and I got to looking, and there was a herd of a deer about 200 yards away. A long way away from me. Think about it, 2 football fields or maybe 3 football fields away. So I took that 30-06 and got me a shell in his bolt action, and I got me a good rest against the live oak tree, and I drew down on this biggest deer. They were so far away from me that I couldn't see if it had horns or not. Even the scope, I couldn't even see if it had horns. I drew down on it and shot, missed that shot. I was so far away from them, the deer just looked around and went back to grazing. And I had me another shell in it, and this deer lifted its head and was chewing, and I cut its throat the second shot. It just fell instantly. I shot it in the spinal column, and blowed out the throat. And it just fell there. The deer never ran off. The rest of those deer didn't. So I got up and started walking down there, and got there, and by shooting it, in the neck, I was shooting at the body, but I hit it in the neck because I raised up a little bit high, and as far as I was away from it, if I'd have been a fraction of an inch off up here, be up there. That's where the bullet comes from. I walked down there to it, and it already bled out good, Went and took it in, and I gave it to my father-in-law's manager, Frank Paycar. He was a bohemian. And I gave it to him because I was down there in a car. I wasn't in my pickup. I was down there in my wife's car. And Paycar said that was the best deer he had ever eaten in his life because it bled so quickly. You don't want to kill nothing and wait 30 minutes to cut his throat or stick it, to bleed it out. He said that was the best deer he had ever eaten in his life, and he had eaten bunches of them. Hell, his family grew up on eating venison. That was probably the biggest deer I ever killed.
Let's go back. Tell me, how did you lose everything? And what was your business? How did you make your money?
Riding horses.
Can you explain that? How do you make money riding horses? Is it breeding or training?
Training primarily and showing horses. And I had a horse that I bought out of the back end of a trailer going around Fort Worth. And I bought her over a cell phone, actually. I told the guy that was carrying them, I said, pull over and let me look at those horses. So I might be interested in them. They was taking them to the racetrack, and this one, I couldn't see the heads or nothing. It was just a 2-horse pull trailer. And I could see the rumps, and I thought, boy, those pretty good-looking rumps. I better see about that. I bought those 2 horses out of a trailer over a CB radio. While they was unloading the horses, one of the polo players came up and said, boy, that's a good-looking horse there. And I said, yeah, he is. He said, is it for sale? And I said, hell yeah, it's for sale. I sold the one horse for $3,000. So then that horse that I preferred was, I got her free. Told Sleepy Illbreath to take her and train her because I knew she was fast just by looking at her. He called me up, and I lived in Denton at the time. I owned Southwind Farm in Denton. And answered the phone, and I said, hello, and he said, hey, this mare can fly. He said, they're fixing to start the Sizzler Sprint. They've already started it. We'd have to pay a late fee to get her in. And I said, okay, how much is it? He said, I think it's $750. Anyway, I gave him the $750. I said, I'm trusting you on this now. See, I'd never sat on the mare. I'd never throwed a leg over her. She qualified for the trials in the finals, and she jumped out there and won that 220 yard by daylight. Daylighted the second horse. She won that Sizzler Sprint. That was $150,000 I made in less than a month off that horse. I'd brought Bertha back to the farm there in Denton and turned her out, and we pulled the shoes off the back feet because if they kick one another, you don't want them to hurt too bad, And those fillies were playing out there in the pasture, and evidently one ran up on her behind her and cut her Achilles tendon. It didn't cripple her, for 2 or 3 years, but I just never did race her again since she was getting a little old, getting to be a 4-year-old and stuff. But that's the way it is, goes in the horse business.
So you and your wife were having issues. Why were y'all having issues?
Well, primarily because of my drinking, and I was pretty much of a whore hopper. I was horny all the time, to tell you the honest truth.
How would she find out that you were cheating?
Well, she was a flight attendant. While she was gone on a trip, I'd do my fooling around. Had a lot of that going on. Finally, she just got to where she couldn't stand it anymore, so she decided it was time for us to bust up, which was a good deal. I'd have left her way before she did if she'd have been doing that to me. But we sold that farm at Denton for $2 million. She got $1 million, and I got $1 million. And I was still drinking and pretty hard, and I took my money and invested it on a bunch of beachfront properties at Lake Ray Hubbard. Then the oil crunch hit. I went broke. I couldn't sell nothing. You can always sell land, but not at that price. And I'd paid way too much down on every parcel I'd bought. So the bank would loan me the rest of the money. Well, when you can't make no payments, even don't matter how much you pay down, when you can't make any payments, you can't make any payments. Lost everything I had. I lost it. I couldn't pay for it, so they repossessed it. Dan Shula. He was a doctor. I'm sure he's passed away by now. I called him. I said, well, do you know of anybody that could help me because I want to quit drinking? He said, yes, sir, I know somebody. Matter of fact, I'm on the board of directors of it, and I own a share of it. He said, I'll call and get you a place. And it's Westgate Recovery Center. He told me exactly where it was. I kind of knew where it was. I went up there and I parked my pickup, got out, finished what was left in a bottle of Old Crow, put the top on it, throwed it out there in the weeds. Stumbled, staggered, and fell into the recovery center and said, fix me. And 28 days later, I was fixed. But I found God, or God found me. I don't know which one it was. I actually felt the hand of God on my shoulder. And I cried more tears that day than I have cried in my whole put together. I mean, heck, the mattress was wet from me getting down on my knees and apologizing for all my wrongdoings and stuff. And I got sobered up. Before we sold the house and everything, it was in closing, and the farm up there in Denton. I was sitting in bed one night watching TV. I don't know how I did it, but I just disgusted with myself, totally disgusted. So I was sitting there with a gun. I had it in my hand. I said, well, I've lost the only woman I thought I'd ever love. What the hell else do I have to live for? So I just reached over and got the gun and was opened my mouth and put the gun right behind my front teeth because I didn't want to miss. I had it cocked, ready to go. Well, it's time. And I just could not pull the trigger. I couldn't pull that trigger. I just couldn't squeeze it. There wasn't that much strength in me. And so I decided, well, hell, I ain't got guts enough to kill myself. I'll just go off and die like an old dog. An old dog knows he's ready to die. He'll go off and die. I figured a good place to do it would be in the desert. Picked my pickup up. I had told them, said, I'm going on a walkabout. Y'all, if I'm not back in a year, sell it and send my folks the money. Gave them the address and everything, and I walked about for a year out in Arizona, New Mexico. I didn't have no maps or nothing. I just wandering around out there in the desert. Figured I'd die sooner or later. I had my rifle with me, 45-70. I figured I'd kill anything I come across. That's a big gun. And I'd use deadfalls to catch rabbits and squirrels and stuff like that with. I'd find a little bitty squirrel trail or something, and I'd get me a rock and prop it up with a stick. I'd cut a pretty flimsy stick. If something ran through there and knocked it down, it'd fall on them and kill them if they were small enough. And that's what happened. I'd catch squirrels and rabbits and stuff like that. I'd set 4 or 5 of them, and sometimes, I'd have more than one caught or killed. Never did worry about anything to eat. I never went thirsty for more than about 6 or 8 hours. I did have my coffee pot. I always had it stuck down in my 5-gallon bucket, and it'd always be full of water. Then I'd drag all that crap out, and then I'd get me a drink out of my coffee pot.
You just get it straight from the river, or?
Yeah, I get it from springs or rivers or pools around. I'd find pools,
And you didn't boil it?
Oh, hell no.
You never got sick?
No. Like I say, I couldn't even get the sniffles. I tried to get a hangnail once, but I couldn't get it. I made money while I was out there. I actually made money. Because I had just come out of Silver City. I was on some creek, I can't remember the name of it, but a rancher had built a concrete dam across this creek. It wasn't much of a creek, it was just a trickle more or less. But he had built a concrete dam across it to catch waters for cattle to drink, because that's dry country out there. And it washed in, flooded a few times, and washed in rocks and everything. And that concrete dam wasn't but about 4 feet high. And I got to thinking, because the rocks were right up at the top of it, and there was some rocks spilled over on the other side. I got to thinking, well, I'll just help this old rancher, because, I'm a semi-rancher, and so I just cleaned out behind his little dam for him so the cows could get down there and get some water. And I did, and I got to looking at a lot of black sand, and I knew that black sand was an indicator of gold. I don't know how I knew it, but I knew it was. I took my little tin frying pan, this long handle tin frying pan, and I dug around and scraped around in there, and I started panning gold, like I was panning for gold. And by golly, there was some gold in there. And a 45 shell will hold 1 troy ounce of gold dust. That's 1 troy ounce. John Clump, his family owned several ranches, and where they lived, they didn't even have electricity. They had a windmill for water, but they didn't have electricity. And we're talking about wealthy people. All their clothes looked like they come from the Goodwill store, and his mama was an Eskimo, Inuit Indian. She could make the best jerky you ever ate. I'd already walked about 100 miles when I ran into them.
Did you know them prior?
No. They had cattle up, and they was working cattle in a corral. And I came up on that corral, and I just come walking on up, And I spoke to his dad, Dan, and told him who I was. And I told him, I'd be camping, but I'd be very careful. John and I, we were in the same neighborhood vicinity of being the same, close to the same age. He was a heck of a hunter. He was a lion hunter. Primarily, he had 25 hounds to hunt lions with. He'd go down to the packing house or to the sale barn. If they had a cow die at the sale barn, or, the meat wasn't good or didn't taste good when they killed it at the packing house, so they had to throw it away. John would come down and go down there and get those carcasses, bring them out and feed his dogs. But he's a character. He was a character. John had a pretty bad speech impediment. It wasn't real bad, You knew what he was saying all the time, but it just different. Poor fella. He asked me, he said, "Want to go hunting?" And I said, "Yeah." So we went hunting. And
what kind of hunting did you think he was inviting you on?
I knew it was lion hunting.
He talked about it quite a bit.
And I kind of wanted to. I wanted to real bad. But we were over on the Members. I can't remember if it was the Members River or the Gila Rivers. The dogs struck, and they started trailing. But John said, "Well, he'll quit running in a little while. He'll climb a tree." And I looked around and I thought, where in the hell's the tree? Just bushes out here, Anyway, they treed, and we got up there and jumped out. They'd jump out 2 or 3 times and run, and each little trip running, they got to where they wouldn't run more than about 50, 75 yards before they climb a tree again, because they done got tired. And the dogs would tree them again and get to where they were, and we'd, take a metal barrel with a lid on it with one of those latches, where you can latch the lid on top of the metal barrel. He'd put that lariat rope, get that lariat rope on them, and then pull on them and choke them out. Had a hole about that big around cut in that top of that barrel, and had a hole about like that in the bottom. We'd put that rope through the barrel with the lid unlatched, put that rope through the bottom of the barrel, and winch it up in that barrel, and then put the lid on it and latch it down, and we had that lion caught. Then he'd relocate them, and that paid good, paid real good. But one day we struck, and then, 7, 8 miles in a hard trail, and those dogs got tired. So he built a campfire, took green juniper limbs, and get a good smoke going for a smoke signal. And his sister Marie would bring him some more dogs. The tired ones, they'd straggle in. It was a little bit off the Members River, pretty good ways. The dogs started trailing, and then they started baying. Trail barking is roar, 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 like that. and baying is yow, 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 you know, barking, all of them. And I only had about 6 dogs with us. Went up there, and it was a bear, a little black bear. He was probably weighed about 300 pounds. The hounds had him backed up against this little cliff. He was fighting those dogs off, and the dog got too close to him, and somehow he got a hold of that dog. And when he got a hold of that dog, he stood up. And when he stood up, I shot him with that 45-70, and where the bullet went in, about the size of my thumb, and where it came out, it's about the size of my head. And he smelled so bad, we didn't want to drag his back. I said, John, you want to skin him? He said, hell no, I don't want that stinking thing around me. That was the bear hunt. But the amazing part was the jaguar hunt. We didn't know we was hunting a jaguar. But like I say, they run probably 7 miles before they ever treed. And we was keeping up with them. By then, it was way past dark. John had a 2-cell flashlight that he kept in his back pocket. Shined it up there, and it was spotted. I'm not going to say who shot him, but it's a $10,000 fine for who shot him. They found out about it, and then we more or less got on the most wanted list. Because you're not supposed to kill jaguars in the United States, but he had come across the border. You know, we was maybe 100, 150 miles from the border.
What'd you do with the carcass?
We just left the carcass there. We peeled the hide off of him and left the carcass laying.
Who has the skin?
I'm not going to say.
And how did the law find out about it?
Well, John went to bragging about it. He has told us a few people, and it got back to the game wardens, and they hunted for us. They hunted and hunted and hunted for us. I think they finally hemmed John up somewhere. And anyway, he said, you know, but you can kill anything in the state of Texas that is destroying your livelihood, which, you know, if there's a red-tailed hawk that's catching your chickens, you can kill him. If there's a coyote killing your goats, you can kill him. No, nothing about it. You know, you can kill it. Anything that's endangered, if it's messing with your livelihood, you can kill it. In Texas, I don't know about Arizona, but that jaguar had killed a pretty good sized yearling, about a 400 or 500 pound yearling, and had eaten part of it and tried to hide part of it. So, you know, that was that.
So what did he tell the law?
I had already left. I was already probably up around Elephant Butte Lake or something.
So you don't know if he got in trouble or anything?
Oh, he didn't get in trouble. Oh, he was in trouble, but nobody, you know, he never was convicted of anything. Nothing at all. Yeah. He'd take people on hunts, lion hunts. And funny thing about it is he'd find a lion and he'd choke it out of the tree. If somebody had wanted to go lion hunting, to call him when he had, could go. And he'd choke them out of the tree and run up there and cut their pads on their front feet. And it don't stop them from climbing, it just keeps them from walking. Come to from being choked out, he'd call those hunters, prospective hunters that wanted to come out. He always had 4 or 5 hunters that was wanting to lion hunt. He'd call them, and whichever one would come out, he'd charge them $3,000, $3,000 or $4,000, go lion hunt. And he'd take them out and lead them around, spend a half a day horseback with the dogs running along, and then take them where they should be, and they'd pick up that lion's trail, because that lion wouldn't go more than 2 or 3 miles from a week later, He'd go to water somewhere, and he'd take them there, and then they'd strike that lion trail, and then they'd trail that lion up, and that lion could climb up in a pinyon bush or a cedar tree or something and get out of the way from them. John said it was the tallest tree on the mountain. He said, "There he is, shoot him." And the guy said, No, and he took his camera out and started taking pictures. And he said, "I don't want to shoot nothing that beautiful." And John said, "Okay, somebody will." he had called another client, and the guy was wanting to kill a lion, but he said he's home pretty. Anyway, I went out there and did my thing for a year, and went back, and I come back home, drove back to Mineola. I came out of the wilderness with a zest to live.
What was it? Why did you now have a zest to live? You went in there trying to die.
Yeah.
What changed?
Knowing that I had a God that would watch after me.
So you tried to kill yourself, and you kept getting blessed, even though you were finding gold and silver.
Yeah.
And did you think maybe that was from God?
I knew it was from God. I mean, I'm just a danged old dumbass country boy. Yeah, finally dawned on me that all my ability with the horses and everything has had what to do with that, you know. I'm blessed that way.
Do you remember a moment when your attitude started softening maybe toward life and God and getting reinvigorated for life again?
Well, I was probably up north of Members, New Mexico, probably 40 or 50 miles. I would just look out around, you know, and think, my goodness, this is beautiful. God created that. God, that's amazing, you know. And then I quit thinking about me and started thinking about God's beauty. I have this saying that, and I developed this saying myself, is that everybody should start drinking, gambling, stealing, cheating, and lying. And for the drinking, drink in all God's beauty and majesty. For the gambling, gamble at all your decisions and stuff you apply to is for success. Gamble on that, you know. For the stealing, you steal a little time each day to pray and meditate and just think. And for the cheating, you cheat time. You actually cheat time if you've got a good plan. For the lying part, when you're lying in bed tonight, say a prayer of thanksgiving and ask for a better tomorrow. That takes care of the drinking, gambling, stealing, cheating, and lying. You don't have to do that anymore. My gosh, look at this place. Look out there at all the beauty that God created. Man can't do that. Just drink it in. See His beauty, His majesty. Gamble at everything you do. Not just to benefit you, but to benefit other people. And you'll get the benefit from it. I promise you. God will give you, He rewards you big time. And I've let God lead me into everything. Well, I come back bigger than ever. Like I say, I don't know how much money I'm worth.
Tell me, can you talk to me about your success after the wilderness? How did you make your money? How did you succeed? What did you do?
You know, I don't know. I just kept doing my thing.
What was your thing?
Horses.
What were you doing? You were training them?
Training horses.
And then you just kept finding that you were making more and more money?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then with the money, what did you invest in?
Land.
Whereabouts?
Anywhere I could buy fine, cheap land.
And then did you sell the land or?
Oh yeah, sell it. I made a hell of a lot more money off of real estate than I did off of the horses.
Where was your real estate? All in Texas? Or?
All in Texas.
So your failure at first was bad investments in real estate?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's when I didn't let God guide me.
So how would you know if the deal wasn't from God and you shouldn't buy?
I'd pray about it and sleep on it.
And then would you have a feeling or would you hear something? How would you know if it was God or not?
I could feel His presence.
You would feel a peace and a presence?
Yeah. So I want to stop for a while. You know, I've got tons of more stories about how we came to this country and everything. You know, we're one of the oldest families in the United States.
Yeah.
But we've always been about half-ass heathens and stuff like that. If you want to ever hear some more, give me a call. Come back.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time.
You bet. I appreciate doing it to let people know what it's like to be a drunk and then sober. Sober's a hell of a lot better than being drunk. There was this woman that her best friend had a new baby, and was born without any ears. Had little holes inside of its ears, but no ears. And she said, I know she's going to ask me to come see the baby. And nobody will keep little Johnny. He's already run every babysitter I ever got off, and he's a holy little terror. She said, well, I better start schooling on him, take him over to my friend's house to see the new baby. So she'd schooled on him for about 3 weeks, and our friend called her and said, come look at the new baby. So they went over there, and little baby was in the crib, and little Johnny is up peeping over in there at her, at the baby. And that one last look before they left. And Johnny turned to the baby's mother and said, does he see good? And she said, oh yeah, he's got good eyes. He said, boy, that's good because he'll never wear glasses.